Hey
We're on
everyone,
the air.
we are, yeah, with Bombin in the AM with Scoops and the Wolf.
Yeah, that's what we agreed on, right?
Ow!
That's what we're doing. Ow!
It's too late now. It's way too late now.
It's
I love it.
stuck. That nickname has stuck in maybe the worst way possible, and now I am stuck with it. Damn it.
It's true. It's true. Once you've done two shows with a name, I think that's just the way it goes. And thankfully, on this, well, I guess our third episode, I guess technically
Yes, third.
in history, as the Wikipedia entry on this podcast slash show will show. We are joined by our first guest, Dean Dodrill, who's the creator of Dust and Elysian Tail, and who recently just passed his first year as the release of Dust. So congratulations.
Thank you, Scoops, Wolf.
You know, as our official taglines, we would like to be referred to by all guests as Scoops and Wolf. So, I mean, Dean, how does that feel to be just past a year? Because a year is a long time, and I know that you were pretty stressed to get that game out a lot faster than you had originally anticipated.
Yeah, I originally had planned to, work until about now and release it like this year. So I crunched it pretty hard. I haven't had. It's been a weird year because it went by really fast. I didn't expect it to go. Like it feels like the game came out a few months ago, and then I went straight into the Steam version, which took another 9 months or 8 months of code. So I still haven't had a break, and I feel like it just came out. It's just a weird feeling, and I'm just starting to adjust to life. But thank you guys for having me on. Yeah, it's quite a momentous occasion for me.
And you know, one of the things that just wrapped up for you, along with a lot of other developers, is the Steam Summer Sale. Like one of the most anticipated moments of the year is people put away their $5 so they can buy 30 games all at once. And you were part of that, and you also launched your PC version, and you had trading cards, and so there's a lot of weird new things that are not necessarily in the developer handbook thing a game. So I'm curious if you can relay some of your thoughts about how being part of that summer sale is from a developer's perspective, because for a user it's just a lot of games for cheap, and I don't think we necessarily think too much further than that.
Yeah, so the summer sale, I think it's further proof that the people at Valve are crazy. I mean, they have some like alien analysts, and I don't know how they figure this stuff out. But I remember, as a user myself, when I first heard Gabe saying stuff like games are selling 40 times as much, even though they were only half off. He was saying stuff like that a couple years ago, and I just thought, wow, that's fascinating, because I'm one who assumes that if you put a game on sale for 50% off, if you sell twice as many copies, then great, you've broken even. So I came out. I launched my game on Steam on at the end of May, and it did really well. We had a pretty good launch. I was kind of surprised because I assumed that I had milked my market, but then the Steam version came along, and I remember last year at PAX when I was first showing the game on Xbox Live, Cliff Blazinski came over because we had worked together on stuff in the past, and he was whispering. He came over and whispered into my ear like details about Steam. He's like, "You got to get this game on Steam, man." And then he started waxing poetic because that's kind of what he does about gaming and making your future and stuff, which is always really fun. But so the game eventually did. I got okayed with Microsoft to go through Steam. I'm still published through Microsoft. I remember telling that to Greg Kasavin at last PAX, and I said, I'm announcing that I'm coming on just on Steam today. Give me one of these. Sort of, it's like that's where the majority of our sales for Bastion came from, and I thought, okay, well, we'll see how this does. So the game did really well during launch, and Microsoft was able to arrange what's called a midweek madness right before the summer sale started. And we sold the game for half off, and that did incredibly well. I'm not allowed to share like actual numbers, but it was just like an order of magnitude number of sales over 3 days of midweek madness. So I assumed that the summer sale would probably do, maybe close to that. Probably not as well because I figured I'd already had milked that market. But I was also launching with Steam trading cards, which we'll get into in a moment. So I got a daily deal during the summer sale, and that's a 48-hour period where the game's on sale. And even though it was 50% off like it was during Midnight Madness, it sold a lot more during the summer sale, which I thought was really interesting. And I think it was just proof that having 5 million plus eyes on the sale and everyone just saving up their money made a big difference. Even though the game was on the exact 50% off like it was just before the sale. So that was kind of an interesting experience.
What did you find anything fascinating about the way people responded to trading cards? Because I know that's one of the weirder, more experimental features that Valve has going on. And so how did you approach that as a developer? Like, do you think that stuff is weird? Did you find that it actually encouraged sales? Like, what did you notice?
So it took me a long time to figure out what trading cards even were. I think Valve hasn't done a great job, explaining how that whole system works. And I'm not someone who really collects cards myself, so I didn't see the appeal. But I did go ahead and add cards to the game, and they launched during my daily deal. And I think they've done an amazing thing in that it's almost like they've added a multiplayer element to the game, in that people are playing the game longer. There's a more social element that's evident in the Steam community, and it's really hard to explain because my game's a single player game, but having that social element has kept people playing kept people playing longer. And I've got a few stats here. So one of my cards, it wasn't even a card, it was an emoticon, and it's like happy face that you would type in, and you would earn that by trading cards. And I was having some of those were selling for $8 or $9 on the Steam marketplace. My game's only $15, so it's like that's kind of crazy. And then I was talking to Zeboid, they're the company that makes the indie retro RPGs like Cthulhu Saves the World and the recent Penny Arcade Rain Slick games. And their Rain Slick on the Precipice of Darkness #4 is on Steam for like $5. They had a trading card go for $30. It just proves that people are crazy and that people like to collect stuff, and that Valve, they just kind of know what they're doing. I mean, someone there decided that this is the way to do things, and I don't know, it's crazy. Personally, I never really cared about trading cards, but I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I've bought a few now because I just want to see I just wanted to see what would happen when you have a whole collection, and I've sadly even bought some trading cards to my own game.
Wait, they don't give you those for free?
They recently added a thing where I can give myself cards, and
well, that's nice of them.
And I was kind of worried because when I saw that, I thought, oh well, can't developers basically screw their own market by giving yourself a bunch of cards and giving them out? But Valve is smart; you can't sell those.
Alex, have you engaged in this dirty virtual currency bullshit that is the trading card marketplace?
I have not. I mean, I've gotten some cards just by virtue of playing some games. Like when I was playing through the new Civ 5 expansion, I kept getting all these random cards floated my way that were, George Washington and various other figures, and I don't know what to do with these. I have them.
Sell them. So during the summer sale, I'm super fortunate enough to have access to a Steam Press account, which, contrary to common belief, does not give you access to every game on Steam. And in fact, the list of games you have access to changes all the time. So sometimes you'll have access to a game and then sometimes you won't. So I still buy games, especially the stuff that I don't know if it'll be around a year from now. But they had the community voting, and the community voting is what put up some of the games that I wanted to buy. And when you vote for those, you got every 3 times you voted, you got a trading card. And then like a week ago, I just sold them. Like, I don't know, I looked at what, Valve gives you a graph and it says, here's the average. So I just sold it for the average, and I made more than I should have because of the way exchange rates work.
Right.
Because it's not universal on Steam. So, like, for example, there was a card that was going for like 12 cents US dollars, but I think someone bought it in euros or some other European currency, and I made like 35 cents on it. So I think I have like $2 in my account or something, and I didn't do anything. So I guess I can't complain with. It's a weird system because it's like everyone is colluding to just get stuff for free. Ultimately, is what it's about. And I don't know if it's just on the backs of people that are obsessed with collecting things, and there's just that tiny amount that's just obsessed with collecting, and the rest of us are just like, fuck you guys, we're gonna get paid and go get games for free.
See, I'm all about that because I am all about exploiting people's obsessions wherever possible for my own monetary gain. So I think that this has actually given me a great avenue for that. So now that you've told me I can just go sell these dumb things, I think I'm going to start doing that now.
This whole thing has basically convinced me that I just need to go free to play on everything from now on.
Oh, clearly, yes. No, microtransactions are the future. I don't know if you've heard that or not.
Yeah, but it's pretty ingenious because you're selling cards, you're never making any actual money. Like you're just earning more money to give to Valve, basically. So I don't know. Like I said, they have analysts that have figured all this stuff out, and it's pretty crazy.
But I
Dave
mean,
Newell needs that money. Motherfucker's got to buy some more knives.
yeah. But I mean, like the question that, like I was kind of had the back of my head was, for when you see all these games for so cheap, obviously it's good for consumers. Like if you just strictly look at it as consumers can buy more games, they like to buy more games, they'll play more games. That's obviously very consumer friendly. But as a developer, like you hear these numbers about 40x, but it's 40x at maybe a quarter of the value. So has that worked out for you? Like, does the math by the multiplication work out that you're actually making way more money off of these sales, or is there sort of like a long tail where you continue to get sales past the actual sales period?
There's definitely a tail, no pun intended, with the sales that, like my game is pretty new. It was only like a month and a half old by the time it hit the summer sale, so my experience might be a little bit unique. But the answer is yes. I mean, it was an exponential gain of revenue, despite being half price. And like other developers I've talked to, they say it's all about that front page promotion. It's all about having a daily deal or a midweek madness, or being like, not just in the summer sale, because every game is on sale during the summer. It's being promoted on the front page. I remember there was some tweets it was on Twitter. It was the artist, I don't know his name, but Vector Park. They make like really cool Flash. They're almost like interactive toys, but they have a game on there on Steam. And I remember him twittering about, like, someone asked him, why isn't your game on sale during the summer sale? Because he's an independent developer. He said, well, it's not going to be promoted. I think he was basically inferring that he was just losing money if he did it. I think it's that front page promotion that makes a big difference. And for me, it was a massive gain being in that daily deal. Like I said with Zeboid, when they did Rain 4, they had a flash deal, and the flash deal is only 8 hours, and I think that's different than the community vote. That's something different. But there's a flash deal for every game, and they said I think they made as much or more during that 8-hour flash deal than they did during the launch period of the game, which was a month before. So yeah, it's a huge revenue boost for developers, and I think you want to try to take advantage of that. I experienced a similar thing when I was in the Xbox Live Arcade summer sale last holiday, when the game was 50% off for one day. I think it was way beyond 40 times sales during one day.
I'm curious, Dean. You're in this sort of unique position where your first solo game was something that you put out initially on Xbox Live Arcade, so you had the experience of working with Microsoft Publishing sort of during that period, and now you've brought the game to Steam. What do you think about what Microsoft is talking about with self-publishing for the Xbox One? Like, do you hear what they're saying and say, like, this is something that sounds appealing to me? I mean, I don't know what your experience was working with them. I've heard from some devs that say it was totally fine, some that say it was a nightmare. I'm just curious, like, what your opinion of that stuff is.
So I had a really good experience with Microsoft, and a big part of that is the people I'm involved with. A lot of people will look at my Steam numbers and say, well, you should have obviously just went to Steam first. And I counter that with looking at a lot of the bigger indie games like Raid, Meat Boy, so on. A lot of those games started on Xbox Live Arcade, and I think there's a lot to be said for starting on a console and having that. I don't want to call it cred, because that's like dismissing the PC community, but there's something about, this game was a success on this platform. Now it's going to hit this other platform, which has a much bigger audience. And that worked out in my favor. And, looking at that, I'm glad that I had worked with Microsoft, and I'm glad that they helped push me for Summer Arcade last year, and then helped push the game on Steam. That's another thing about Steam is you really don't have like producers and people you're talking to. I mean, it's a very small group of PR and marketing people that you're talking to, and it's hard to get a hold of anyone. I mean, there was that mix-up last year where they fired a bunch of people at Valve. That was kind of weird, and that happened like right when I was trying to set up the marketing for my game and try to set up the launch. So having Microsoft in my corner for even that was kind of nice. So my experience has been really good with Microsoft. I think they've kind of screwed up every way possible as far as their PR has gone with Xbox One. But I think self-publishing is going to be a big deal. I am still not a huge proponent of. I mean, I don't buy into self-publishing as quick as some people do, because there is something to be said about a curated platform. Xbox already had Xbox Live Indie Games, and you were allowed to self-publish there, and it was community voted, and we all know how that turned out. So, Sony saying they're going to allow self-publishing is great. I kind of hope it works out for them, and I hope it works out for Microsoft, but I'm still not 100% sold on it. Because even on Steam, you can't. I mean, you can self-publish, but getting in is very hard right now with Greenlight. But I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's good for indies. Microsoft saying that is very promising.
Cool. Anything you can talk about as far as kind of like what you're working on, future plans type stuff right now, or you still kind of not quite there yet?
So, during the summer sale, I finally passed 250,000 units sold across Xbox Live and Steam. So it's afforded me to kind of finally take a break in my life and say, I'm at that really fun moment where I can take time and just let ideas simmer in my head. I do have ideas for future games. It will be nice to not be known as that Dust guy.
Sure.
Because I've only got the one game under my belt. But yeah, I'm hoping to announce some stuff. Hopefully, maybe next year.
Cool. Glad to hear it.
Awesome. Well, why don't we move on to the headlines? I'm gonna get this one out of the way.
All right.
Real fast. Is just woke up to sheer terror. Just tons of people on Twitter telling me, Patrick, they have announced a release date for Amnesia, a Machine for Pigs, September 10th. I am simultaneously enormously excited and absolutely fucking terrified that there is another Amnesia game coming out, because Amnesia: The Dark Descent is easily one of my favorite games of all time, like probably my favorite horror game of all time, and the Dear Esther is a phenomenal game. It's experimental, kind of hit or miss. I wouldn't blame anyone for not being that into it, and I thought the ending was pretty bad. But those guys know visual design, and having them work on a follow-up to Amnesia is just holy shit. And so that is coming out, I guess, September 10th, and I kept being kind of excited when they would delay that game, because it was like, oh, well, then I don't have to play it yet, because what am I going to do, not play the new Amnesia?
Oh, I'm excited, because I'm with you. I loved Amnesia. It's just like so. They took the Silent Hill thing of walking up to enemies after you kill them and saying, well, that doesn't look that scary. That's kind of dumb looking. And they turned it on its head. You can't look at the bad guys. You have to run. You can't fight. And I don't know. That game just hit all the right marks.
It's one of the only games I wasn't able to finish just from sheer stress, because I have my own anxiety issues, and as much as I love horror and horror games are hard for me often because of the fact that I have to make the decision to go into that scary room that I myself would be like, nah, fuck that shit, I'm out. Yeah. So in the game, you have to do it. And there were too many moments in that game where I was just like, I know what's coming. I know what's going to happen, and I can't do it. I just can't do it. And to be fair, that's because the game is so good at atmosphere and building the tension and all that stuff. I'm guessing I will probably get a few hours into Machine for Pigs before I just tap out and I'm like, nope. But I will probably enjoy just about all of it while also sweating profusely.
I mean, I think that's why horror games, I mean, obviously Let's Plays are a pretty popular phenomenon of the last, 5 years or so, but I think it's also why you have folks like, was it PewDiePie is one of the more popular YouTube Let's Players who primarily plays horror games or plays a lot of horror games, and I don't think it's a big shock that horror games are one of the more popular topics for Let's Plays, because I think people a lot like you, Alex, where they're interested in being scared, but they're not interested in being the person that actually has to survive the scare. Like they want to experience these games like they do a movie, which is that you can close your eyes and someone else is going to keep going forward for you, and you don't have to be the one that survives the encounter or interacts with the gameplay mechanics. You can purely just enjoy the thrill ride of the scares and treat it like a roller coaster, as opposed to an interactive roller coaster where you're the one that actually is going up and down those hills. And so that's part of the reason I really like playing it, but it's also the reason I really like doing like Spookin' with Scoops, because people, they get to have that interaction with the game without all of the tension that comes with actually hitting forward on the keyboard.
And that's evident in the chat in Spoken with Scoops, because I just constantly see people says, F that, I'm not going to play this game, but, thank God that Patrick's doing it for me.
Yeah. All right. Alex, you got anything on your end?
I got a few. So I feel like I just kind of want to address this because of the sort of weird absurdity of it all. So yesterday the news broke that Prey 2 or Prey something, despite previous claims by Bethesda that it was not going to Arcane, that Arcane Studios was not working on this whole thing, is in fact working on a Prey thing, that perhaps the Prey thing that Human Head was at one time working on. And then in the Kotaku story, there were all these like leaked emails where people were talking at Bethesda were talking about, we're going to get slammed from the press sneak fucks or whatever that they decided to refer to us as. Such a weird situation, because they have been kind of steadfastly denying this very vehemently in a way that a lot of companies would just sort of like, we don't comment on this sort of thing, whatever. I'm kind of curious what, Patrick, you think of this whole situation, considering we know we get lied to by PR people a lot, but this is kind of like the most direct public acknowledgement of that in a long time, and I'm just like, what do you think made them kind of go in this weird kind of shady direction with not acknowledging Arcane or any of that stuff?
It's strange from top to bottom, especially when you include what may or may not happen.
Uh-oh.
I think we lost Patrick.
Oh no, did we lose Patrick?
That's how pissed off he was.
God, it really pissed me off too. Well, I don't know what Patrick's point was going to be before we kind of lost him there. But for me, the thing that there's Patrick. Patrick, are you back?
You not hear me?
Yeah, you just like seized up for a minute there.
Oh, weird. Oh, your network connection is experiencing difficulties. Check your connectivity. I don't know.
Yeah,
but you can hear me
now?
All right,
yeah, I can totally hear you now. So why don't you go ahead?
I think it's weird top to bottom, especially when you start to think about the Human Head's involvement and whatever version of that game they were working on, and do not appear to be working on any longer. What I don't understand is why Bethesda said anything at all. Right. I don't. Pete Hines is their PR guy. He largely represents ZeniMax and Bethesda and sort of the subsidiary companies they work on, and I just never quite understood why they chose to say anything. If they just wanted to keep it at no comment and move on, that would have been fine. And I think there would have been reports about what was going on behind the scenes. But what makes them look really bad right now is these emails where they're talking very candidly, which is not a shock. I'm sure this happens all over the place. And to be frank, like if developers are a little on edge about the press, I think that means the press is usually doing their job. I think that developers shouldn't be 100% comfortable with the press. I think there is a friendly tension that occurs between the press-developer relationship. And yeah, it just strikes me as very odd that they're making these very public statements that are essentially, if you believe a lot of the reporting that's coming out of Kotaku, which so far seems to jive pretty well, that they're just arguing semantics, right? Like about whether it's Human Head's Prey 2 or Arcane's Prey 2, and their own juggling of semantics seems to have painted themselves into this weird corner where they should just issue a press release that says Arcane is working on, a game, or working on something called Prey or a sci-fi game. Just put it to bed, and people, they're fueling their own bad speculation by not just coming out and being a little more forthright. And until they do that, I'm not necessarily sure that they will do that. I think you'll probably see angry tipsters like the one that Kotaku heard from originally anonymously, putting out stuff like that, for one reason or another.
I mean, the one thing I do understand is their reluctance to necessarily say what Arcane is working on, what they're doing with the Prey franchise, because I'm guessing there's probably some weird legal stuff going on with Human Head, considering the very unpleasant way that relationship apparently seemed to sour. But, like you said, the normal way to handle something like this would be to say, we're not commenting on this, we're not talking about this, we're not talking about Prey 2 right now, any of that stuff. They have not done that. They've actually been kind of weirdly, roundabout, but like sort of specific in the ways that they're roundabout, and kind of fueled the speculation by the way they've handled it. And so, as much as we hate the way Microsoft will often be like, we do not comment on rumors or speculation, that sort of blanket statement, that sort of like very specific way of not dealing with it, never really gets you into trouble either. So I kind of think maybe there's something to be learned from all this, which is to say that if you really don't want to talk about something, fucking don't talk about it at all, because all you're going to do is rile us up and rile everyone up and get you into some weird positions like this.
Well, and to be honest, I don't really care about all of this stuff. Like,
sure.
I don't really care if Arcane is or isn't working on a Prey game. The story about Human Head and what appears to be ZeniMax's long troubled relationship with independent developers, and what appears to be multiple cases of them, for lack of a better term, appearing to bully people around. That's an interesting story. That's one that I would like to know more about. But I think a lot of this actually comes down to the video game industry's obsession with secrecy that you don't see in other mediums. You do not, in movies, when there is a sequel to something, they just go ahead and plant that flag and announce that movie 3 years in advance, because they're trying to. It's a little bit different in movies because there's a lot of strategy in picking out your release date that I think is less so in video games. But movies in general, if something's a success and they want to make another one, right after it's a success, they just say, hey, we're going to go make another one of those. And
right.
I think games, the industry itself, could benefit from taking some lessons from other mediums and just dropping the cloak of secrecy. It doesn't mean you have to give away your big mechanic. It doesn't mean you need to say what the setup even is for the next one. But people are obsessed about a sequel or what someone is working on next, and I think we would stop a lot of the very unhealthy and troublesome speculation that leads to stuff like this if the industry just kind of dropped its bullshit a little bit and just said, and it's different for different developers, like stuff like what Dean is potentially working on. He hasn't maybe figured out what it is yet, so he can say he's working on another game, but I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, you should announce your title and sort of your general idea of what you're doing. But if you knew that you were going to make, like, just say Dust 2, like, maybe then it would make more sense just to let people know, like, hey, that's what I'm doing, stay off my back, I'll talk to you in 2 years when I've got a better idea of what that's going to be.
Well, to be fair, that didn't work out so well for Phil Fish.
No. I think a big part of it is that the movie industry is a well-oiled machine. Like, they know how to make movies. They know how to, like, their PR know what they're doing. They know how to get actors into, night shows and talk about the movie. I think the gaming industry is just still in its infancy when it comes to that sort of thing. You're looking at games that AAA studios are still spending 3, 4, 5 years on. And once we, I don't know, I don't want to say standardized, but there needs to be a little bit more standardized practice with some of that stuff. And then, maybe those then developers and publishers will feel a little bit more comfortable just saying, yep, this is a trilogy. Well, I want to step back because look at how that's bit people in the past, announcing trilogy beforehand, and then it comes to bite them in the ass because they can't deliver on it or the first game sucks. And maybe the movie industry is more willing to, eat those failures because there's just so much money being involved and it's such a well-oiled machine.
Dean, confirm or deny, you were working on Prey 2.
I I was offered a job at Human Head many years ago.
Oh, really?
So I could have been working on Prey 2, which I would not be against. I was a big fan of the first one, and I'm super excited for the second one. And I think this, all this speculation and all this dirty business is, really sucks surrounding that game.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for Prey 2.
Cool. All right, Patrick, what's your next thing?
So I don't I feel obligated to say that they announced Call of Duty multiplayer, but I don't have anything to say about it because that stuff just goes right over my head. It does seem like the response to the multiplayer this year is a little more excitement. It seems like they're being a little more progressive based on the changes they are making. I couldn't even tell you what they are. I just know that what I've been doing when I've been reading about it, it seems people are more excited than they have been in the past when it might just be like, well, of course there's multiplayer. It's Call of Duty. I mean, some of the changes, from my perspective, I think it's really cool that they're adding female soldiers into multiplayer. The games industry has long hidden behind the excuse that it's only a technical problem, while we haven't seen more of that, which there are certainly probably some rationales for that, but it being constantly used as a blanket reason why we don't see more of that in games. So I think Call of Duty, the biggest franchise in video games, saying, hey, we're going to have this variety in our multiplayer. I hope that, prompts sort of a sweeping change amongst other, everyone else copies Call of Duty, so I would hope that maybe they copy Call of Duty in this respect too, given that, the developers in the interviews I read said that it was constantly, one of the number one things they were asked for was that they have more of a female population than you might think for a game that constantly kind of gets characterized as for dude bros, but that those players don't get to represent themselves in game and constantly have to play as male avatars. And so I think that was, for me, what I find interesting about this stuff. I think it's very cool that Call of Duty is doing that, and I definitely hope that signals other developers deciding to put in the effort to kind of, if for nothing else, then just to be in feature parity for as crass as that sounds.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. Call of Duty multiplayer, I have very little to say about that because I don't think I've played any since 3. So yeah, sorry, I have nothing to add to this.
Same. I like Call of Duty multiplayer, but it's been kind of the same for a long time. So
yeah, doesn't do a whole lot for me personally. I do have one more semi-noteworthy thing, and I'm actually kind of curious what Dean thinks about this. So this is we've kind of talked about a little bit of this on Monday. Microsoft sort of the endless placation of the demands of the people. Most recent thing, Kinect no longer required to run the system. That was something that they had pushed for a long time, and then basically as of this week they were like, nope, you can just run it now without Kinect being plugged in. You don't have to. We're still going to sell it with the system, but it's there if you want it. We want you to want it, but you don't have to anymore, I guess. I've never been a big proponent of Kinect. There are maybe 2 games ever that have done much of anything for me, and at least one of them was Dance Central. So it's like, I've always thought it was kind of a superfluous thing. This feels like maybe at least a tacit acknowledgement that even they don't necessarily feel a whole lot of burning desire from developers to work with this thing. What do you guys think?
I think it's an obvious acknowledgement. Obviously, they're probably looking at sales, like pre-orders and stuff. But like I said, this has been weird. Microsoft. I was a huge fan of the 360. I actually kind of like the Kinect because I've got kids, and they're like, I think most of that is because of Double Fine, like Happy Action Theater and Once Upon a Monster and stuff like that. Stuff is really cool. Double Fine has nailed it with Kinect, and I think smart developers can do stuff with it. I don't really care about gestures when I'm using Netflix and stuff like that. I just rather use a controller. I thought it was going to be growing pains, with the Force Connect in every box, but I had come to accept it. I thought, okay, this is what they're going to do, and if people want the Star Trek future, companies like Microsoft are going to have to, help us through these growing pains. And in that sense, I thought, okay, I'll accept it. I'm going to buy an Xbox One anyway. I'm not thrilled about some of the potential security issues, but then hearing stuff like this, I don't know. I kind of wish they would just commit I mean, this is better in the long run, and there's a lot of gamers are cheering for this, and a lot of gamers are hoping for a connectless package, and I would buy one too. But like I said, I'll probably buy Kinect anyway because of my kids. But yeah, this is just really messy. It's really dirty. I mean, what was talked about on the latest Bombcast, they did a good job, kind of, covering all these bases, and I pretty much agree that Microsoft, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, they're just trying to find a way to get more people interested in the system. I mean, my understanding is that pre-orders have gone up rather precipitously since, they first announced the first major changes to that thing.
Sure.
But, I get the impression that in some ways they're trying to put themselves over the top, and they probably feel like they haven't yet.
Sure.
And I have to imagine that they're in going through and polling developers and seeing what people are trying to do with the Kinect. If they're at a point now where they're literally saying this thing is no longer required, it's one of two things. Either they're just not getting the developer interest that they want, or this is some sort of weird, play to the whole, like, oh no, we're not helping the NSA spying thing or whatever. I mean, I don't actually think it's that, but it just feels like a really weird move to make, so far after all the other moves that they've already made to try and, make the audience happy. And I don't, I have to believe that it's just that they just aren't seeing the future in this thing that they once saw in it. And I don't know, I don't think they'll ever admit to that. And I imagine they'll keep trying to push it as if it's like, the most key thing in the Xbox, like one of the key features for a while.
Sure.
But I haven't heard of any developers at launch or coming up that have really said, oh yeah, no, we're really excited to work on this Kinect thing. We have some great ideas. Like Fantasia is like the one example I can give of a developer that seems like they're really into it.
Yeah.
And they're actually doing something kind of cool with it.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean, even Microsoft, like they, none of their shows or conventions or conferences have been about games on Kinect. It's always been about the external stuff. So I got the feeling that they don't even think of it as a big gaming thing. And obviously they're thinking of the Xbox as more of an all-around, in the living room multimedia hub. That makes sense. It sucks for us gamers.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. I'm worried that they're losing the message. I mean, they've lost the message on some things. I think a lot of the changes they've made recently, like the DRM and stuff, has been like smart. I think it's made fans happy. But the Kinect thing is very weird.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all the main headlines I got, Patrick. If you have any other big ones, we can toss them out there. Otherwise, we can just do a couple of quickies and then maybe take some user questions. What do you think?
Well, the last big one would be the announcement of Grand Theft Auto Online. That was the idea that Grand Theft Auto 5 is going to have online. I don't think is the big surprising part. I think what's really interesting is that they're treating it as essentially as a separate product. Like the way they're phrasing it is that Grand Theft Auto 5 comes with Grand Theft Auto Online for free, like as though it is it's not just the multiplayer part of GTA 5, it is a completely separate experience that just so happens to come free with GTA 5, and that it's not going to be on the disc when the game comes out in September. It launches on October 1st, 2 weeks after the game's released, which seems like that is Rockstar saying, here's how we're going to prevent people from finishing the single player, which they're, maybe they're looking at stats that say it takes people about 2 weeks to kind of burn through their traditionally 40-hour storylines, and at 2 weeks, you drop GTA Online. That hooks people, that keeps the disc in the machine, that stops it from going to GameStop or Amazon or any other trade-in place, and potentially hooks them for much longer. And I have to wonder if maybe this suggests that maybe not at first, because they don't want to cannibalize GTA 5 and they want to see what the response is, but that potentially they could be releasing GTA Online as its own separate thing that lives in between the new major releases of a Grand Theft Auto game.
Yeah, I seem to remember at some point, and I don't know if this is... Oh, wait. Oh, Patrick, you're glitching out again. I seem to remember that there was some sort of GTA Online thing that was proposed a long time ago, and I don't think it ever really came to fruition. It was maybe I'm totally misremembering this, but I seem to remember someone saying, "Oh yeah, they're working on some sort of like multiplayer only GTA thing," and I'm wondering if some of the ideas from that found their way into this. The thing that's interesting to me, and I saw someone describe it as this, but also in a negative light, which I actually don't agree at all, is that it looks like PlayStation Home, but with guns. And in that regard, I think that they have accidentally found out exactly what's been wrong with Home all this time, is that you could not run around and commit crimes and do horrible things in Home. It's like, it's a lifestyle thing, but where is all the fun, violence, frankly? And I look at that and I think,
apparently you've never made a man train in Home.
no, I haven't. I've spent regrettably little time in Home, thankfully. But looking at what they're doing with this, the sort of like we're hanging out, you can do the most absurd, dumb stuff possible. In a way, it also kind of reminds me of like Burnout Paradise, where it's just like you get your team together, you try and do the most absurd stuff possible you can in the environment you're given. But you can get out of the car and, do like all the horrible gun violence that you would do in the main game. And I think that sounds pretty fucking great, personally.
It looks awesome.
Yeah.
That trailer, I mean, there was just so much. Yeah, it just looked fun. I mean, just a huge playground. I played a bit of 4 online, which I thought was really amazing. It was one of those, well, all these ideas sound really great. I have no time to play any of this stuff, but if I had a group of friends and we were regularly doing this sort of thing, it'd be great. And that game's still always at the top of like the top 10 playlists of, I think, like of Steam and Xbox.
Cool.
Have I returned from the dead?
Yes, you're back. You're fine.
I don't.
It was only a second.
All right. Why don't we? I guess we'll try and do some short headlines. Games for Windows Live Marketplace closing August 22nd. Client will remain operational. So no longer will the storefront be available, but there will still be sort of the client wrapper, which slowly but surely games seem to be removing. I know the new update to Street Fighter 4 is going to remove the Games for Windows Live wrapper, go Steam. People have looked at the registry for the Batman, the Arkham games, and they're taking out the Games for Windows Live stuff and wrapping that around fully in Steam. So it seems like the continually grand but flawed experiment of Games for Windows Live is truly coming to an end.
Maybe that's for the best.
I'm so glad that I didn't have to implement that as a Microsoft published game. Like, I'm just glad that early on we decided, no, we're not going to do it, and obviously that was probably leading up to this.
Clearly for the best. Patrick, the NFL Season Pass going away on PlayStation 3, nothing on Xbox this year, no console football games. I know you were using that at some point to enjoy watching your favorite football team while in San Francisco. Are you sad about this?
No, because I found a workaround, which is that the anniversary edition of Madden, which is $100, comes with a redemption code for Sunday Ticket. So if you don't know, NFL Sunday Ticket gets you access to all of the games all at once, and it's got some cool visual stuff so that you can be keeping tabs on multiple games at once. It gets you access to Red Zone, which shows, as it describes, every game as it's going to the red zone and just flips between those. Was available on the PS3, and it was about $400 the first year. I want to say it was $300 last year, which is cheaper than going to the bar every Sunday. So even though it's expensive, it made sense. But to the anniversary edition of Madden this year, it's $100, and it gets you access to Sunday Ticket on your PC and your mobile devices, so like your iPhone and iPad and what have you. My PC is hooked up to my TV, so I can redeem that and then get the Sunday Ticket experience on my TV because I have an HDMI cable wired together, and so I'm basically getting NFL Ticket for $100, which is a steal. And if I decide to not hold on to the game, then that NFL Ticket goes down, even more. So I'm not too bummed, but I am surprised that they clarify with DirecTV that this isn't part of Xbox One either. And given the big NFL partnership they announced at the reveal event, you would have thought maybe that was the explanation. But I think it's too bad. I think Sunday Ticket is a good deal for folks that want to watch out-of-market games and don't want to go to the bar all day to watch them, especially if you're into fantasy games and have a fantasy league, because that can get expensive real fast every Sunday. So
Fair enough. Patrick, why don't people in the chat, if you would like to send questions to Patrick, we'll get those together. 2 very quick ones while Patrick is collecting those. Audiosurf Air, early access in September. Is anyone as excited about this as I am? I fucking loved Audiosurf. One of my favorite, like, first early indie games, I think, that I ever got super into. Anyone else super into that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it was like the first big indie game. Maybe that and Cave Story.
Sure.
2 of the big ones that people thought, wow, you can make your own games, and with the advent of digital distribution, yeah, everyone I knew was playing Audiosurf. I still do. It's awesome.
Terrific. Patrick?
Do you want to explain to people what Audiosurf is?
Audiosurf is a game in which you take music from your computer, load it into the game, and it creates procedurally generated levels that are sort of like rhythm-based movement, lane shifting kind of stuff based on the music, and you can use anything. So it's a little bit, in a way, it's sort of like a spiritual successor to, I don't know, something like Vib Ribbon, but with, it's very much its own gameplay and visual aesthetic. It's something that's a little bit more like a frequency or an amplitude in that regard. I actually remember that at one point when I was at Harmonix, I got there and I was talking about Audiosurf, and they were like, yeah, we're trying to decide if we want to hire that guy or sue him. They did neither in the end. Everyone there actually really was very admiring of that game. But yeah, it's super fun. One of my favorite things of the last several years. And last question. This is the most important question of the day. Coolio is selling his entire music catalog at auction so that he can become a chef.
That's great.
Who here is willing to go in with me on auctioning, on bidding for the Coolio song catalog?
How much is there an estimate?
Opening bid is at $140,000 for everything, all 130 songs that he has, including the Keenan and Kel theme and Gangsta's Paradise. Just throwing that out there.
Have you talked to Jeff about this? I'm trying to. I think you might be talking to the wrong crowd here.
Dean, no taker, not interested.
Oh, I don't know. That's tempting. I'm actually more interested just to see him become a chef.
Yeah. Apparently he's super into the culinary pursuits these days. I'm very curious to see what that would turn into. All right, that's all I got at this point. So
okay, Alex. A lot of people are asking thoughts on SummerSlam, the thing you are doing this weekend.
It's true. I am going to SummerSlam today. I fly out tonight. And it's going to be, so they're showing off the entire WWE 2K14 roster, a bunch of the modes and stuff. There will be wrestlers there who I will be interviewing with this new digital recorder, which I bought, so I'm not just using my cell phone all the time now. SummerSlam looks like a fun card. I'm looking forward to seeing, Daniel Bryan versus Cena, some of the other matches that are on the show. I don't have any serious predictions because everything going on right now in the WWE is a little strange and confusing to me. I don't really know where things are headed, but I like that. I like that I can't just sit there and predict what's going to happen because, it's a scripted event. So, at some point, sometimes it tends to get pretty predictable. But I've been enjoying the product for the most part recently. We did the podcast recently, and I'm actually super looking forward to the show. I think it's gonna be fun.
Dean, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but people are definitely curious if there are any plans in the future to try and take Dust to platforms that aren't Steam or XBLA. I get, the ones that people were asking were specifically sort of like Mac and Linux, but I don't know how you built that game and if that is even something that's reasonable or possible with the way you put it together.
So Mac and Linux are possible because the game was built with XNA, and there's a thing called Monogame, which is like a movement to try to. It basically lets you port the games to other platforms, and Mac and Linux are like targets for that. So is iOS. So the option's there. Since Microsoft is my publisher, I still need to arrange stuff with them, but it's something I'm kind of looking into. And obviously the other big one is Sony platforms. I've talked to Sony and stuff, but obviously being a Microsoft published game makes things a little bit trickier. But yeah, I'm actually more excited to kind of move forward. Like I said, it would be nice to have more than one game under my belt. But I'm not like ruling out Mac and Linux at this point.
Awesome.
All the cool kids are going over to Unity, so I might try
I've heard that.
Unity. Yeah.
Well, it's, Unity offers the ability to, it's not as simple as just like, file export, go to Mac, but in terms of, having that unified code base, it is substantially easier. At least my understanding is that it is much, much easier to accomplish getting it out on multiple platforms, including, you know, tablet devices and things like that, than using things like XNA.
Yeah, and that's a shame about XNA. I mean, like everybody knows that it's already kind of dying. Microsoft has stopped support, and it's a shame to have spent, you know, several years of my life finally learning how to program, and, you know, being excited about this new language, and then it's like, oh, you know, it's not valid anymore. I can't use it anymore. But Unity sounds like, you know, everyone's supporting it. All the major platform holders are supporting it, and, you know, for like new developers, I would definitely recommend staying away from something like XNA and trying to go into something like Unity.
Let's see. Definitely, there's. I'm not sure if either of you have had a chance to catch up on it this morning, but definitely a lot of discussion happening on Twitter and other places about. There was a story that went up on Polygon yesterday, written by Brian Crescente. Basically, sort of writing. He wrote a larger feature about some of the support groups and stories from a number of developers that have had trouble coping with death threats and harassment and some of the other pretty insidious things that have happened as a result of them being developers and being close to their community and trying to solicit feedback, where it's definitely stepped over the line. And the bit that's kind of gone viral was about a BioWare writer who wrote for Dragon Age 2, you know, which was not necessarily the best received BioWare game by any extent of the imagination, but, you know, she started receiving, you know, extreme death threats, you know, drawings about her children being, you know, killed on the way to school, and she eventually decided that that was enough, and she's going freelance to kind of get out of the limelight and not be so, I guess, persecuted while working for BioWare. I think it's really tragic. I think video games are a unique medium in which the creators and the people who enjoy what's created, the fans, are so close, and that is not something you see elsewhere. You don't see, you know, Ashton Kutcher, you know, personally replying in message board threads discussing his latest film, and yet that is what you see out of almost every developer in video games. And the thing that worries me is if enough of these stories are happening that we start to see an erosion of that culture, and you start to see more of what you see in other mediums where people hire firms or, you know, managers to run their Twitter accounts, to run their Facebook interaction, to run, you know, interfacing with the community, and that we no longer have that sort of one-to-one give and take between the people who create things and the people who enjoy what's created, and that bums me out, and it's awful for everyone involved, especially for all of us kind of on the sidelines that, you know, just want to see more of this happen, and what can you do to stop people from acting in this way.
You and I talked about this a little bit last night about, you know, being a public figure, being at the, you know, being in people's eye, like, you know, obviously you're a journalist, so that you're, you know, people know your face, they know what you write. Me being a one-man company, you know, like, I'm the face of my company, I'm the face of the games I make, and, like, you know, sure, we get a lot of crap, you know, people say nasty things, but stuff like death threats and, you know, drawings of our children, I read about that this morning. It's really disgusting. It's a real shame because, you know, I love reading what developers are talking about on Twitter. You know, sometimes they don't, sometimes some of them need a bit of a leash and kind of hold back on what they're saying, and, you know, think about what they're trying to say and try to understand that, you know, 140 characters isn't the right way to express really important subjects. But yeah, it's a real shame. I mean, I feel really bad for her, and I just, you know, sometimes people are just really nasty, and, you know, if it's driving people away from this industry or from being public, that's really sad.
And the only thing I'll add to this is just I'm looking in the chat right now, and while most people are, you know, kind of reacting the way you would expect people to react to something like this, which is to say this is pretty awful, there are a couple of people who seem to be saying that, you know, they don't really understand why people are taking this so seriously. Why are they being such babies about this? Big deal. It's just a threat on the internet, whatever. The thing I will say is that while you may not take, if someone were to do that to you and you don't feel it and you don't feel anything about it, you're immune to that sort of, you know, a threatening behavior. That's great for you. You don't have that sort of that level of sensitivity to that. Most people aren't you. And most people don't have those kinds of reactions to people telling them they're going to kill them or their children or their families or whatever.
Oh, it's
I don't.
terrifying.
Yeah, I don't even get that level of stuff. I get people talking about how much they hate me and whatever, and even I'm kind of sensitive to that, and that's fine. I can at a certain point I realize it's different, and I can deal with it. If someone were actually threatening me, if someone were actually telling me they were going to kill me or something like that, I would take that very seriously. I don't care if it's an idle threat. I don't care if it's just someone mouthing off on the internet. That level, taking it to that escalate, and people are very quick to take it to escalate it to that level these days because it is so anonymous and it's so easy to just kind of barf out whatever heinous thing comes into your mind whenever you're pissed off. That is something the internet has enabled in a way that I don't necessarily enjoy, but it just kind of comes part and parcel with being a public figure on the internet, like Patrick and you said.
One of the things I will point out, some people in the chat are saying that the story that kind of went viral was this story that went up on Metro, which was taking a piece from the Polygon story, and the way I guess Metro wrote it was saying that she left because of the harassment. It appears that's not necessarily the case. She did leave. She left for what she says were family reasons and some other stuff she wanted to do. I think a lot of the points we're talking about still stand, regardless of the reason she left. Like these events still occurred, and I think what I found most distressing was.
Oh, and then it hooks up again.
I was going to say, like, I had personal experience with this because I think roughly about 10 years ago, right when I got married, I decided. Sorry, Patrick, you cut out for a sec there. But
it's all right. Go ahead.
I was going to say I kind of experienced this about 10 years ago because, like, the internet was becoming quite a big thing. I actually met my wife on the internet, which was exciting. But so we've been together for 12, 13 years now. But around that time, right when I got married, I just kind of got fed up with how people were acting online because I was becoming a bit of a social figure, and I decided, I don't really have time for this. I want to start up a family, and so I basically cut myself off from all social media for about 7 or 8 years. I didn't use like chat programs or I hardly emailed anybody, and it was nice. And one of the reasons I did that was just because of it wasn't so much harassment, but there were people saying, I'm gonna drive out and visit you. It was more friendly, but it was also one of those. I didn't want to be that public. I kind of just wanted my own private life. And it wasn't until I started working on this game that I decided, okay, I kind of need to, start putting myself out there again because people, I need to sell this thing. But I can understand, those kind of threats really scaring people away because, anonymity online gives you a lot of power. When you're a public face like you guys are, or like I kind of am, it can get really scary, especially if your family's out there and you try to protect your loved ones.
Yeah, and as someone that doesn't really have a family to protect necessarily, it's kind of just me sort of fielding that stuff, and that's fine. If it's just me, I can deal with it. I can't even imagine if people started threatening other people that I cared about, because I don't think I would be able to react to that in a way that was at all conducive to me continuing this line of work. I totally understand where that woman is coming from. I think that she, if I got that level of threat, I would totally reconsider my position and what I was doing as well. And, I think it's whatever you thought of the writing or whatever in Dragon Age 2, I didn't like Dragon Age 2, but that's the point. You make criticisms, you criticize, you talk about the product, you talk about the work involved. If you're going to take it to that personal level, you're no longer criticizing, you're just a bully and frankly kind of a piece of shit. And that sort of behavior, I think we've really tolerated it for too long, and seeing sites like Kotaku and IGN make small steps toward policing that kind of stuff and sort of just kind of try and excise it from their communities where they can, I think that's admirable, and I hope that we start to go more in that direction with a lot of this stuff, because it just doesn't need, those are voices that do not need to be heard. Freedom of speech, whatever, you're using your freedom in literally the worst way imaginable, and I don't ever want to interact with people like that.
Sure. There was that similar story on, I don't know if you saw it on Kotaku, of the lady who was harassed by another user, and she tried to complain to Microsoft, and they just kind of dragged their heels to enforce their, I don't know if they banned the guy or what. He was basically making rape threats against her and stuff, which people do on Xbox Live. But the fact that it took so long and she had to make it public before anyone at Microsoft would acknowledge her, like, that's a big problem. And yeah, there definitely needs to be that sort of policing, and having news sites cover that stuff is great.
For sure.
I think that pretty well covers the topic. Dean, I want to thank you for coming on the show, for joining us, for being our first guest.
Thank you guys. Privilege is all mine. You guys have been doing a great job so far. I'm really enjoying it.
And definitely congratulations on the 1 year anniversary of the game. It was a favorite of mine last year, and I'm glad that it was a success for you.
Okay, and there was, I don't know if Patrick's been handing them out, but I brought a bunch of free codes for.
Oh yeah, I've been dumping them in the chat.
Yeah, I've been dumping them in the chat, getting
Cool.
people redeeming those. So I'll go through and see if there's any I missed. But in any case, that is Bombin in the AM with Scoos and the Wolf for Friday.
Scoos and the Wolf? Is that what you said?
I'm going to blame that on my bandwidth and not
right.
on the fact that I can't speak. But we'll join you guys again next Monday before you fly out.
Yeah, I'll be in my hotel room for SummerSlam before I fly back home. Funny thing I forgot to mention, while I'm at SummerSlam, there is a very good chance I'll be in the room with Warrior again.
Oh,
I don't know how that's going to go.
You're going to interview him again.
I don't know if I am. I don't know if it might not be an interview situation. It might be more just a public thing. But if I can, I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can make happen.
I just don't talk about his hair.
No, I won't. No.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and again, thanks for Dean for joining us, and we will see you guys on Monday morning. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.